the part where I'm really most stuck is like emulating logging into an iCloud.
Lady.
Oh, what?
A new lady recording in progress. She sounds.
Yeah, it is.
Now.
The voice.
That's abrasive.
Yeah. iCloud Notes display online is the least scrapable and most like ass backwards UX design I've ever seen in my life, probably to prevent shit like this from working, because the whole iCloud.com interface is it like ghost renders images. It like renders images as like layered divs just to, I guess it might be usability, but it makes scraping the shit almost impossible. You can't like send a GET request. You can't, nothing works like that. You disable JavaScript, the whole thing breaks. It's just like it looks very pretty, but the way Apple built it was like this delicate house of cards that just only works because they want it to work like this, and it's not at all open. So that's why it's honestly just giving me more motivation. If I can get iCloud Notes out of iCloud and onto the internet, like it's a way of saying fuck you, Apple. So I'm excited.
They'll just hire you.
Yeah, they'll hire me to kill this feature because like they want to keep it so yeah.
Gotta liberate the notes. It's a
yes.
Yeah.
Why do they make it so hard?
I think they want to keep a very strong association per iCloud user. So you share this note with another iCloud user or with another phone or with another person, and then everything remains locked. Even if you do read only, you still have to like generate a link and add them as readers. As to why that is, I don't know. They're just being Apple.
Trying not to leak data or something, I don't know.
Yeah. Like, I think they're trying to say you need either an iDevice or iCloud.com to access this data because we want to make sure it's presented in the way that it was created. But that's, yeah, it's.
I mean, it's also, there's a market lock-in.
Right. Yeah.
You don't let the media be free, then, and you can say that like, we're doing it for your own good because,
Use it as market.
What?
It's almost like marketing. Like I made this on my Apple with my Apple app, and everyone's like, "Oh, I want to do that."
I would think so. Honestly, yeah.
But they don't do that.
It's not even that clever. I came up with it.
Apple's like mentality.
I'm not like a master marketer.
Well, they have like such a privacy mentality too. So it's like always everything like closed off and like don't tell anybody and like. Why would you share it? You know, I ran into this with the live photos when I was playing with them.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I mean, you could make a web version of this. You could make a thing that goes everywhere. It could be a format. Your Apple. You could make it the Apple live photo that everybody could use. You could build one.
Yep.
No, they don't do that. It can only come like I had to like hack together an interface to like build one of these things without a camera. Because they have it like directly connected to the camera, like apps. Anyways, this is how they do their things. It makes sense, like
very Apple-esque.
Yeah. So
I wonder too if some of it's driven by like old technical things that happened. At least I heard some old things about Objective-C that if you basically knew the internal function, like all these things are just not documented, but you could access whatever functions you wanted. So if someone released code in the open that used internal functions, now it gives everyone the ability to go like mess with things.
Yeah, well, dangerous.
And then, so then they started reducing like what was public and then also like expanding their APIs to be very specific and you can only get this data because this is only the available thing because you can mess with our system if you have access to anything else.
Yeah.
But again, it's like the whole.
That sounds, it reminds me of something as well.
Yeah.
There's probably tons of factors.
Don't build an iPhone as well. Don't build anything that gets that big and you don't have to worry about any of this. Like just keep it small, keep it fun. Don't build a $2 trillion company. That's what I've learned today.
It just comes with
you had to learn it the hard way too.
I know, right? Do that, though. You have to go out and build it and then it smacks you. Anyways.
How old is Apple? 40 years?
Yeah. 79, I think. 78. Somewhere in there.
That's remarkable.
As old as me.
A lot of dollars per year in growth.
Yeah. Yeah, like so we were just talking to Beamer, like sort of about what he's building. He has like he built a media system that worked on like what was it? GitHub's issues query strings. So that he could pull back like all of his media assets for which he has piles. This is a problem like when you're doing, like when I used to do like commercials and stuff like this and photography or whatever, just fucking piles and piles of this stuff. So he has some like, he understands sort of fundamentally what we're playing with here in the, like, cause he's sort of tried to build it. And he was talking about like the stack he used and how he like sort of organized some of the data and stuff like this, and like how you store the views and they're just queries, you know? Anyways, so he's like, he very quickly picked up where we were at and like had been somewhere near that environment. So, and he expressed interest in sort of playing along some. So if, you know, and what the Discord is like and whatever else. And then Shahruz, you and he are like jamming on stuff or whatever. So we brought up the like internet camera thing, and then we were talking about DAOs. And so anyways, the bubble expands.
And like we agreed that the time scale that Beamer works on, he's like in the future at least like 5 years, like the way his brain. And Dave's like a couple years out. And then Shahruz is like real time. He's like, well, that's cool that that's happening in the future, but like right now we can just build a simple thing.
Yeah. You could, but all of these cool pieces, and then you could, you know, build a robot that knows itself, or whatever. Yeah. Anyway, so it was like pretty fruitful. I think if we need to do some more of the design jamming stuff, or particularly like maybe some of how the data is organized or like accessed or something like this, I mean, he'd probably be good to jam with on that stuff. So, yeah.
So,
Sweet.
Should we just open, not like open, but should we open the Discord up to other people that like, I don't know, maybe we just talk about before we let them in? Some like slim governance, something or other on this, because if people are hanging out, I don't know, we got into the lurker, like free rider kind of problem, so I don't think we'd want to open it up publicly, but like if there's people in there that we know are interested and like aligned, again, how do we decide and how do we have those conversations? I don't know, but Mike Bodge was another example of someone who was like, hey, I'd like to come hang out and see how do we make these decisions?
So both of them are building in the ecosystem now.
Yes.
And they're interested in technically and like functionally what we're doing, like from a peer standpoint.
That might be a good criteria.
And then there are other folks who are interested in what we're doing, but maybe not. They're still like on ramping into how any of this works and stuff. So there's some other way to work with those people, events or something, the understanding club things maybe. But I'm all for inviting anybody who is like actively in projects in Web3 to come hang. I mean, it makes sense. Yeah, that's sure.
I'd be curious, like other Discord models. I know Athens Research kind of, their Discord blew up very quickly when they were like just starting. And I don't know if there's certain ways like in channels we can like introduce or document which each one is for. I think to some extent they're self-explanatory, but maybe just giving it a little bit more purpose so like content feeds into the right places.
Yeah, you can do just like simple description stuff within the channels, which is funny because I did that when I was confused with the inspo external, inspo internal, or whatever the two things were. So I went in and did it, and then like the next day I was like, oh, someone went in and labeled them exactly how I like think about it. And I was like, oh, I did it. Useful. Like I did it for my future self and I didn't even know.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah.
It works for goldfish.
It's a good label.
That's like a simple,
Yeah. I definitely like the idea of more people hanging out in Discord, but I'm in like a dozen plus discords here, and it, like most of them just go over my head because it's impossible to keep track of anything once you're in it. It just becomes a noisy mess. And there's like I think active ways to avoid against that. That's kind of in the side of governance / Discord moderation styles. And I think the two groups you mentioned, like interested in co-building or interested in learning about, are a good distinction. Maybe the interested in about are kind of like funneled into these events that are more or less self-contained, that just like feed off of things that are happening in the rest of the server. But then if you're actively co-building, maybe it's a little bit like a cohort, like, oh, if you're interested in building the media stuff, there's a channel or a set of channels that you have access to that pulls in stuff from the main channels as well. And so kind of keep it a little more segmented. I think I've mentioned it before to you directly, but one of Aslan's projects was Thought Collider, and they invited a lot of people in, but each person gets their own kind of private channel that's them plus like the core group plus that person. And so that's where all of the back and forth happens between the core group and the outside people. And then that funnels into like a more, public just display of, so essentially it's like quiet rooms that have stuff happening and then going out into the living room. So lots of models, but I think it makes total sense to make that a
I
bridge.
think there's lots of ways to sort of airlock or gate access where it's based on like how much you're engaging and like what your role is.
I mean, this leads to the like reputation tokens and token gating and all this other stuff. Like it's the natural on-ramp to that. I think just doing it.
And staking tokens, like one of the things that Beamer was talking about, like even like it's just financial, but if people come in and they're staking the token for the community, it helps with the general liquidity and like the vitality of the community and therefore the token. So there's skin in the game, which is good. But we were like, it has to be that plus some kind of like actual work done in the system. Otherwise, you're just paying to like lurk, I guess, which is fine. Like you're playing a role, but I think in the beginning, at least, we want people more actively engaged.
I think there's a balance there. So there's money coming into the system, right? And that money can grant you access, right? Based on some rule
maybe
set.
to certain things too. Yeah.
That is just one mechanic for like a holistic DAO, I think. You need that mechanic. You need investors. You need financial resources coming into it, and there should be rewards based on financial games for those resources. But there is an entire social layer of the DAO of these organizations that are based on, I think, should be based on sort of participation in the DAO, like either cross collaboration or who knows, like there you can define that all sorts of ways.
I mean, even just adding emojis to posted links, like score them somehow, move them from place to place, filter. But I think like the minimum threshold of actively contributing back is actually quite low. It's like on Twitter, it's a like, but a like cumulatively is a lot of value. And obviously it only goes up from there.
Yeah, so if there is some way to then take that field of social design and engineering, right, and then attach it to smart contracts, things that smart contracts can do that can produce results from these socially designed, this is the games and things like this, right? This is the pipeline, I think, that like can then offer tokens of differing values and like relationships that are tradable or not or whatever, right? And or like they could be key cards, like in the case here that if you go to an understanding club X number of times or whatever, and you are logged into this thing with your wallet, and like there's also some other coordinating thing, you then have a key card to get into like a larger area of the Discord for now, right? We can come up with sort of arbitrary systems to test the model for now, but like it's based on presence in an environment that like would be beneficial to the overall ecosystem. That just came to me. That was fun.
Yeah, that was great.
That was good. Yeah.
It reminds me of the older forum like style where people have badges and you have the total post count, but that's not as actually like as accurate as more of like the custom things that they have participated in within the forum, or like what sub-forum do they administer, and then you really start understanding like how they relate to the rest of the community. Like if that's all kind of mintable and collectible, transparent, that's interesting.
Yeah, or if it can feed into some.
I mean, it's not a bad idea to mint experience together somehow, like to sort of codify your participation and that you were participating with this group of people and you created, even if it's just like collateral like this or meeting notes, because it starts, you build a lineage of like, here's how I operate and who I operate with. And this is what allows trust to build in systems. I mean, this is what the whole idea behind Web3 is. And then you can use that information because, trust points, like there's all kinds of weird dynamics, I think, that come out of this.
Yeah, I mean, once you have like, so if you can start printing the currency based on like participation somehow, right? And this is this is a protocol, I think. Like you can build all types of different versions of this. But then once you have a trusted, like these things are, you can trust that the tokens the tokens that are produced from these activities are spendable in some way. Like they are trusted money for some kind of interaction or collaboration or like exchange this way, and then potentially DAO to DAO exchange. You can build like another layer of mechanics on top of that, like that allow for deeper cooperation potentially. Yeah. Because the thing that you are pegging your money to is like the ethos that you're trying to produce in the like the DAO or the organism that you're trying to, or the organization you're trying to build. So yeah, it's figuring out what like types of activities are rewarded in coin or things that are similar to coin.
Yeah, for some reason, this is like kind of touching on EIP 1155 to me in a way, or it seems like it's very similar in the way, like maybe you're participating in an event and you get like a bunch of like participatory like tokens or something that you can build out. And then either, I guess you could use these as key cards or you could trade them in some way for like some coins that you can spend in the system to unlock, something else.
You get both. You get the coins and you also get the minted experience, whatever artifact that looks like. And it could be more than one NFT too, depending on, I don't know, maybe you package these. We're coming up with like a type of NFT that's like an experiential NFT like thing.
So the money, how does the money spend differently if it is like?
Well, one thing gets you access, right? It's like the culture thing you were talking about earlier. That's the NFT. It's bespoke, it's unique. And then the other thing is transactional. So you can, if you were voting, you're voting. If you're collectively going to buy something,
So if so we were talking earlier about like how to structure the sort of working environment of a DAO. Like, what is the type of, like in a company, we are people who like go fast and break things, and then we all sit in a giant room together and wear headphones and never talk to each other, whatever. Like there are different environments to make things. And there is a cadence in which the work is like made, and then a way that it is distributed and a way that it is assigned or like taken on, whatever. We're playing with a lot of that stuff, like in our working group here. And the kind of thing that we were thinking in terms of a DAO structure is sort of seasonal, right? There are things that you are working towards within a set period of time. Okay, fine, that's nice. And this is a coordinating thing over a large group of squads, right? And then the squad is, a unit of measure in this. And then you can sort of break down your work into work cycles, that fit into a season, and those can be oriented however one chooses based on squad movement or whatever. Why did I bring this up? Anyways,
Seasonality, I don't know.
I don't know. I just
Currency spending different than NFTs.
yeah, I think I probably lost it. So
Trying to structure
seasonality
DAOs.
being the thing that goes into your currency. So if you earned your currency during a season or during a work cycle, or you were participating in some part of the ecosystem, it is now like there is a sort of narrative or lore layer on top of the money. And so like I don't know what that you can do with that, but it's information that didn't exist. Like when you give me $5, that $5 is $5, right? Like, and this is where like,
we're like in one like big season that started in 1776. We got to start a new season. Yeah.
So money earned in a specific context may have value that is above and beyond or below like what the pegged value to like a stable coin would be or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyways, there's some relational quantity to this that.
Yeah, and to flip that, like by searching that monetary thing, you can find the other people, the rest of the cohort, the people who also helped and understood.
And relational information. Interesting. And then when that money spends, when it's exchanged, it is moving through an environment that cares about that thing.
You can do this too.
Which you get adjacent information to areas that may not be connected to the original like minting. Weird.
You can track minted money, like currency, like in the system now. It's just boring. Like you could do the thing where you like track this dollar bill or whatever. Like you could see movement in like batches, like they're dated and stuff like that in weird like cryptographic ways. But this is just interesting because the other thing is just the money, like where it is and like how much you're just like, okay, but like who's using it and for what? Like what if you could see how everyone was spending their money for that? Like
she invented a surveillance state.
You're the one that invented it.
I didn't say it out loud though.
I want to see more like toy UIs around this kind of stuff because it can all be general purpose, but like I mean, people play these like, AAA RPG games that have all these super complex leveling systems and currency systems, and it's just nuts. And they understand it. They don't need to be like taught it. So like more toy or game-like UI that, is maybe taking some of that data that's on Etherscan, but making it feel more like, metaversey or whatever, just a little bit more game-like, more accessible, more kind of, storytelling. Like that kind of stuff could just be built and then applied to every single ERC 721 and every single ERC 20 right out of the box.
Can you give me like a little snapshot of one of these, like just even the sketch of an example, like?
Roblox.
Maybe. I mean, even that's not necessarily what I'm thinking. I'm thinking like there needs to be more, simple web 2D kind of explorations of framing what's happening on Etherscan and what's happening on Ethereum in more accessible, fun kind of UIs that are not, here's a bunch of tables, but rather here's something that feels like, you've connected your wallet and now it's like a cool visual. Like I'm not describing anything.
No. I'm starting. There is movement and patterning in the blockchain. And
but there's a lot of it and it's all overlapping.
So
you're saying take a subset of it and instead of displaying it as like lists of chains of transactions, show a graph or like not a graph, like a little village next to another village. How did the little people move between them? And did they have another store that they were like going back and forth to, and just flatten it down from like a multi-dimensional graph.
And then from that, I think once you get something that's understandable to the average user, you can start building in functionality that right now is just really tricky. So like one example, like with the film stuff and internet camera, at some point I want to think about, how are all the different ways that people can distribute this, whether it's for free or for money, and how do we make that really easy for them? Because like there's on the high end and the complicated end, there's like Uniswap, which people can go and take their film right now and go and list it there, but it's super complicated. I want to figure out, what's the UI where they can just say each token is going to cost $5. and I'm just going to sell it, and here's my little web page that does that, and it's just that one transaction. But like if I were to build that for film, that would work out of the box with every ERC20.
Yep.
So like I think there's like some kind of like base layer, kind of like what are the most accessible versions of these very simple kind of things, both on the explanation side and then also on the transaction side, if the explanation side is effective and accessible and makes people feel comfortable with this stuff. Which I think, just like thinking about like Assassin's Creed or something and how complicated that stuff is, it's like, anything simpler than that would be a good step.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that makes that possible is the world. So the reason that people will go build, I mean, I've done it, like build crazy libraries and stuff in Final Fantasy and, like hack these systems, is because there is this constant feedback loop and there's a gameplay involved.
Right.
Because like without the mythology, I guess, or whatever equates to the mythology, as fancy as it needs to get, like people can glom onto that and then they'll play. And so right now we have like money mythology. It's a pretty easy one for a lot of people to understand. Like if I go play this game, I can get money. Like, and I like money because money gets me, whatever the hell I need. So
hot dogs and hamburgers.
Exactly.
Especially those.
Vegetarian also.
The like easy UI componentry, right, makes these games accessible, but you need the game logic so that people will play and use the things, right? Because they won't use the things just for the sake of using them. Like there needs to be upstream. So like I was talking to Beamer about this, one of the problems that we seem to have is like we need to create a big enough playground so that people can come make these things of their own accord, right? And then offer them or give us a reason to do that. Like, because and this is the kind of thing that we've been doing. We just run ourselves into problems so that we can solve stuff. And that's how you invent. This is how the retroactive public good stuff works too. Like I'm just going to I'm going to build this and give this away. That mindset that you just had, Shahruz, where like, here's this pattern that would make all of this easy. Like how getting it into the world, like so that people can use it, is one of the problems now, because coming up with the patterns are all sitting there, right? Like, so it's delivering the patterns. So this is, I think, part of the broader work that like we started talking about the DAOs. The DAOs are the delivery system for these patterns so that they can get like picked up and used so that more people can onboard, right? So it's a sort of like recruitment strategy of a type so that more people can play. Anyways, this is sticking together with some of the stuff Beamer was talking about, because he has the same, like there's all these things, we want to give them away, but how? So anyway. Stuff, things.
Yeah, both of the links you dropped to chat, Shahruz, look very interesting. And the first one is kind of like this Discord-y, how do you reward users and give them special privileges and incentives once they've done things. And the second one, I'm trying to understand, but it looks very cool as well.
The second one is proof of active participation, is what POAP is short for. So they're NFTs, they're on another layer too called XDAI by default. And then companies are basically just rewarding folks NFTs for certain things. So a few weeks ago, I got a free one from the Graph because I had deployed a subgraph within like their first year or whatever. So I got like an XDAI NFT that was for free, gaslessly claimed and all that. But so proof of active participation seems to be like one flavor or one service that is saying, hey, we can, somewhat centralize the creation and distribution process for kind of participation trophy NFT type things. And then source cred, I was looking into for internet camera stuff. It seems a little too complicated for now for my case, but it solves some of the stuff I think that you were talking about, Dave, where it has a system for multiple currencies. I think there's like seeds and grains or something, where one of them is non-tradable. And then the other one is tradable for currency. And so you can convert one to the other, but the base one is some form of like non-tradable, like this is proof that I myself was the person that participated and contributed, et cetera. and because I cannot give that over to somebody else,
Mhm.
there is no way for them to say that they contributed. So it solves,
Right.
or it uses that token for a more specific thing where the tradability would be a bad thing, because then it's no longer a way to prove that you were the one contributing.
Separates rewards and proof, basically, right? Like
Yeah.
tangible rewards versus social proof.
Interesting. Yeah. And then that exchange. Do you know how that exchange works between the reward token? Yeah. Okay.
It was very complex. Their setup process involves like downloading stuff from Git and setting up your whole environment and stuff. So it's not like an easy, deploy from a web UI kind of state yet.
Interesting. Yeah, like what I'm curious about is like when and how. Like, so if you're earning like reward reputation tokens, and then those can be converted into like a token that is tradable, right, to the outside market. Like, there's probably some hop like in the exchange because those values are changing. I think this is where the bonding curve stuff came in. I don't get it at all. Like, Kristen talked to her friend who's in finance about bonding curves, and she's just like, I don't know. So,
well, she's
By
like,
easy way of, or good.
oh, good. If you know,
yeah.
this would be great.
So her take on it, she comes from like a trading background, is this is too efficient. There's no way to hack it for like some individual person's benefit. She's like, I don't understand. She's like, I really don't, I don't get it. She's like, how do you, she's like, it's like she's like sort of like, what was her like phrasing of it? It was like too posy, basically. I was like, yeah, that's how all the Ethereum stuff works. And she's just like, what? And I was like, it's generative. Like, people are building things so other people could build things. She's like, yeah, she can feel the structure of how that would work, but as a trader, like, that's not good. She's just like, no, you got to be able to take some people out at the knees. And I'm like, no.
This is the
Doing that.
positive sum unlock. Like, this is the language you're seeing positive sum everywhere in all the writing.
Yeah.
That's like an example of this. Yeah.
So yeah, I'd be curious if you understand it.
Bonding
Like,
curves.
I mean, the simple bonding curve explanation that I use is that you create a fixed amount of something, and then each one is sold for more than the previous one was sold.
Yeah.
And the game there, the way that some people can benefit from that is kind of just, it's a standard stock game, but more direct in its rules, where you're trying to, buy low, sell high. So being in early,
yes.
you can sell it back to the pool. If I bought something for $1, 10 other people have bought it, and for that reason that price has gone up, I can then sell it, my early one, back into the pool for $15 or whatever the going rate is at that time. So it's kind of the standard thing of, you don't want to be the last one to sell, because then you're gonna be selling it at a low rate. You always want people coming in and buying after you. So it's still kind of playing those standard kind of like, guess how the money's going to go kind of game, or guess which direction the value is going to go and try to sell at the top. So it's still that, but it's a fixed curve so that the price gets more expensive. At some point, it's prohibitively expensive, where nobody's going to pay $1 million for whatever the thing was. It started off at $1. Yeah.
But
I don't know if that helped at all.
Yeah.
How is the slope of the curve? Like, so we found like a piece that broke it down mathematically, and she's like, I still don't get, like, how do you basically arrive at the slope? Like,
it's like whoever designs it how they want to design it. So if you want it to go up at a specific rate, you can go up at a specific rate. If you want to like, there's mathematics involved here that give some convention. So like, there's some curves that are just like out of the box good kind of examples to use. So some formulas that you can just convert into solidity, and that's your pricing model. So I don't know all the specifics about what the best ones are, but you can design that curve however you want, essentially.
The only thing I'm unclear is, like, how is that price guaranteed or enforced or incentivized, and how restrictive is it? Like,
through the smart
could I
contract.
go off market. But how does a smart contract interact with a market?
World.
Yeah.
So Unisocks is one example that is actually doing this. So I poked around their contract a while ago. So Unisocks is the Uniswap company made 500 pairs of socks that are branded. They sold it on a bonding curve, so anybody could buy a token that represented those Unisocks. And then when they want to actually redeem the physical socks, they have to burn that token. So the Unisocks' contract essentially had people buying stuff directly. So the mint function requires a payment. And so the contract can say what is my current total supply? Run that through a mathematical function that will determine a pricing. Require that minimum price has been submitted as part of that mint transaction. And if so, mint that token, reward it to the user. If not, reject it, and that transaction fails. So it's just baked into the contract.
It's at the minting level, basically. Like you go to it and you're like, I want a token, and then it does all the math behind it.
Yep. And then from there, because it's just an ERC20, again, people can trade it however they want. So what's happening with Unisocks is that people are trading it on Uniswap, and it's being fractionalized as like an investment kind of opportunity. So you can buy 0.0005, Unisock tokens. You're not going to be able to ever redeem a pair of socks with that because you need one full token. Yeah. But you can get in on the investment. So as the price of Unisocks goes up, you can proportionally kind of, benefit, or what is the opposite of benefit? You can lose money proportionally as well that way.
Yeah. Okay. So after market trading, or I guess after this, that all exists still. That's all fine. Yeah. You could literally trade it offline if you want. Okay. But it's specifically the minting. Yep. That's and then I think,
at that point, the contract is kind of just pegging some kind of value to it, of like, this is the minimum that you can sell something back into the contract for. So it's not going to be below that. This is the price that the next one would cost if I wanted to mint a new one. So it probably shouldn't cost more than that. So it kind of it sets a range so that your pricing isn't, in too much flux.
Yep.
Where does the burning come in? When can you burn the?
So that's a Unisock specific kind of like gimmick that they added in, but it's fun. So every one full token represents a physical pair of socks that they have in their office or the warehouse space, whatever. To get those socks, you have to burn a token and then send Unisocks your proof that you burnt it, a transaction that shows that you sent that over to the 0 address. At that point, somebody at Unisocks packages up the pair of socks and sends it to them. So what I've seen happening on Twitter is like, there's a handful of people that have redeemed their socks when the socks were valued at like 60 grand, which is just like, that's like a VC flex at an event, is they're going to go with their Unisocks on and be like, these are $60,000 socks or whatever. So it gets kind of silly, but it's fun, and it's a cool like application of
it's
the bonding curve stuff.
A group of people coming together to like decentrally own a pair of Unisocks then.
Yep.
Right. Yeah.
DAO holds socks.
Socks are one thing, but I mean, opening this model up for all sorts of other like digital assets and trading. I mean, there's so many weird combinations of this that. This is cool.
So
licensing and stuff can be put on a bonding curve as well. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this is back to the bonding curve and how like your internal reputation tokens could be somehow converted into like sellable. Like I'm trying to figure out how that maps, because this DAO to DAO thing was talking about this. Like as an internal governor on
were using it, so there's a shared pool of resources among like a number of DAOs, and they're basically co-funding research was the idea. So they're paying contractors with this pool of money in this like shared treasury, and there's like a bunch of smart contract actions that lead into this where you would be in the place where you would even have shared funds with another entity. So they're pegging the money in the treasury to a bonding curve somehow and like paying out from there. That's where like but all of the stuff that Shahruz is talking about, like how to like manipulate and play with it, they just sort of like skip to, you peg it to a bonding curve and then you could do all these things with it. And we're like, but how? Like, how do you get there? So,
the bonding curve as market starter makes perfect sense. Yeah. Like it's, it gives you a ceiling, and then, there's trading below the curve, and, then there's all the things that you were talking about. How that engine continues or can be applied to an existing like system, I don't understand really. So anyways, that got to, I don't know where
your money can go further or something like.
Yeah, I think part of the way to look at this thing is looking at how like that reputation, like to outside token thing can be made. And I don't know, maybe there's a, like, you burn part of a reputation token and like, you know, that has a like some dollar value, and then that mints. Okay, that can work. So you have like earned those reputation tokens. Stick with me here. I just tied in the retroactive public goods thing. So you have a system in which you are enacting some participation in a DAO, like during a season, that gives that token like seasoning, like it's got a type of stink about it, a patina that makes it rare or not, but it also trades at a minimum set value probably, right? It has a tradable value outside of the cultural impact of that thing. Crap, I'm gonna lose it.
Earning reputational tokens within a season.
Okay, so that, God damn it, I lost it.
You tied in public goods.
The public goods thing is
Retroactive.
Retroactive public.
so that's tied to the seasoning of this stuff. Like, then the trading of it. Oh, so when you burn a token of a particularly like virulent like reputation, you get more of them probably, right? Which is and that can be rewarded retroactively to those reputation tokens as a public good. So like say you mint them, they're worth exactly what everything else is worth, right? Like you're just getting reputation based on whatever social contracts and games and whatever. But later that particular game turns out to be one that's really beneficial to the rest of the market. So how do you then like retroactively pay into those tokens? You have to have the lineage there. You have to have the seasonality there, all of that, you know, whatever, that metadata in the money so that you can get paid for doing altruistic projects.
Yep.
There's a app for the retroactive public goods.
When you can bake this all into the smart contract too, that specifies that any of the output that was produced during this cycle has some sort of attachment to a public good treasury or whatever, so that in the instance that something is deemed and it you know, hits this tripwire, that means that we now enact this section of the protocol, which is to pay these people back according to this structure, or according to a structure that hasn't yet been defined, which means, you know, I'll need to meet because the committee of whatever has been summoned. You're like, fuck yes.
And this builds a game where the best of these projects, the most useful of these projects, can receive the highest status rewards, right? And so you now have a whole ecosystem based on this kind of thing. Easily said, but that's the general like principle behind the lore that you can build for one of these things. Like, we are the type of people who do this type of thing, and this is the rewards that we get, and we can prove it because here's the treasury and the contracts that say that it'll happen. So your lore is tied into like the movement of reward, or, you know, whatever. That's fun.
Shit's getting weird.
It really is.
Yeah, I think the game aspect of this is so vital, right? At least like the bonding curve stuff with the Unisocks makes sense. There's like this physical sock aspect of it. So what's the physical, or like the relative metaphor there? That can be applied here, and like that becomes the game. So these like more digital goods, or even I guess it could be physical goods as well, once they are produced, have like some retroactive funding to them.
Get enough money, and then you can build like cool places to be in the world, to hang out with other people who are doing the same stuff. And if you get enough reputational tokens to enter into this thing, you legitimately get to go hang out with people there in the place doing the thing to continue, you know, like it's the kind of on-ramping into a voluntary institution. Now I'm like 20 years ahead.
Yes.
Yeah, I can't wait until you can like do there's a link between like say your Rainbow wallet, your MetaMask wallet, and it can speak to like a smart lock with an NFC reader on it. You can just swipe your thing and it reads like, do they have the right currency minimum or the right NFT? Just unlocks all around the world that way. It's very cool.
AR metaverse right there. Yeah, that's it. Like, instead of adding virtual things to the physical, you're adding physical to the virtual. I'm not like, I don't even know what the difference between that becomes, but oh, the lines are getting blurry. My goodness.
This is all going to happen when Apple updates their wallet app to what a wallet app is in Web3.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we already got all. Yeah. I mean, how far off are we? Like years?
Can't be that far.
It's years.
Years.
I think it's years.
Yeah.
5 years minimum.
Oh, I think one of our games should be build a physical door unlock for this.
Oh, I mean, yeah, we could totally do that. I'm saying for Apple to like integrate Web3 into their kind of core products, definitely years.
You think at least like 5 years, probably?
Minimum. I think best case scenario, everything goes well, 5 years probably.
Yeah, you have people like Jack Dorsey who are like front running, like the people who can play with money at that scale, like they can build a square, right? Like you need somebody that has the like infrastructural understanding, because these things are like financial products that like are nation statey.
Crazy.
I mean, this is where like Facebook is doing Libra. Like they're trying to create a fucking nation. I mean, this is how it works, right? Like, because if you can control, so there's all this regulatory and like, there's a lot of stuff that needs to happen so that they can find the instantiation that they can bring into the world. So like, it's not a technical problem. This is great though. We get to play all the stuff and find the patterns right now and hopefully build one that might have the potential to like maybe be compatible with this thing, but also afford a lot more openness. Like the behemoth nature of these companies, like that's to their detriment. So
yeah, they're gonna wait until they have great UX to copy and spend like 2 years refining and making, their even better version of. I think like Android probably going to be sooner.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Apple doesn't want to deliver something that has like these weird unknown questions behind it. Like the average user, I guess by that point needs to at least like, I mean, it's not gonna be average user for sure, but there needs to be pull from the user base. And once it's there, the user base kind of needs to go, okay, I've been waiting for this and I know how to plug into this.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess like as with all of the previous features and hardware, like they'll wait till it's as polished as possible. But I mean, that's a delta in that delta.
Or maybe they'll get crypto pilled, Tim Cook, and then he'll just decentralize all of Apple.
All of Apple.
Would be amazing.
Exactly. You take some LSD like all the hippies want, and then boom.
What's really cool
I
about
be out of Apple very quickly if such utterances were.
I'm like
the potential of like what happens when Apple does bake in this kind of stuff into their wallet is amazing. Because right now, one of my biggest frustrations with the Cam app, one of every user's biggest frustrations is hopping over to the wallet. Sometimes it doesn't register a transaction. Sometimes it doesn't send that signature back. If Apple integrates it natively, it's just a sheet that pulls in. You never leave the context of the app. Yeah. It's the way that Apple work and Face ID and all that kind of stuff just work out of the box right now.
Oh, yeah.
So when apps can just do that by default, apps and websites and stuff, that's a game changer.
How many people are working on this at Apple right now?
Wait, actually, hold on. I'm confused. Would it not be possible to build a wallet that integrates into Apple Pay? Like, there's an Apple Pay SDK. Like, does it have to interact with the traditional banking system, or could you theoretically like create a card, maybe even through Stripe or something, that allows you to now like hack in these transactions?
Yeah, Starbucks shoves things into Apple Pay. I mean, they're not tied to fiat. Like, there could be.
I mean, there are some financial I think there's at least a few DeFi companies. I don't know if they're DeFi, but like that are putting credit card faces on crypto.
Yeah.
Like, from a consumer standpoint, like you can just run the card and then it probably does some exchange in the background or whatever. Interesting.
Coinbase and BlockFi do that.
Shahruz, I am curious what is the cause of a potential signature being lost? Is that like the app not registering something? Is that like a delay? I guess what are the
Yeah, so right now that communication goes through a service called Wallet Connect, which basically anything that's widely used right now that's not just MetaMask in your browser where the extension can talk to your webpage directly. Every other instance of you connecting a wallet usually goes through this Wallet Connect service. So Wallet Connect was for a very long time all hosted on one server, everybody hitting the exact same URL.
Holy
So it would very quickly go through network congestion problems.
Yeah.
And then the design of their system in V1 didn't have any kind of callback mechanism that would register like, hey, I received this message successfully. Because if you have that, then the app can say, oh wait, I didn't get back a success flag.
Yep.
So let me retry the attempt. So right now, it's the app just kind of has to shoot blind and say like, let's hope that once the user is inside their rainbow, it'll pull open the right alert, and once they finish with that, it'll come back with the signature, because it's just one-way communication right now. So Wallet Connect V2, which is on the protocol side done, and they're hosting instances of it, but the wallets now just have to adopt it. Wallet Connect V2 has all the back and forth communication, has like retry functionality, should be a million times more stable. So it's just a waiting game. The problems I think have already been solved. It's just a matter of the ecosystem catching up.
That's a good sign. How is Wallet Connect? If you know, like, I guess it sounds a little centralized. Yeah, like how do they ensure transparency and scalability there?
Everything I think is end-to-end encrypted, so I don't think they have to ensure too much on like the security or decentralization aspect. Anybody can also run a node by just like taking the Docker image and deploying it somewhere, and then pointing their own app at their own instance. And then but besides that, it's just standard API requests and that are encrypted and like WebSocket connections for live updates.
So it's more like a coordinating bridge than any sort of processor. It's really
exactly. It's like here's a service, a URL that my app can talk to, and that the Rainbow app or the Wallet app can talk to. And because they're both hitting the centralized service, we'll be able to communicate that way without me ever needing to like get a private key out of Rainbow, which an app should never have the ability to do.
Makes sense.
Do you know what the holdup is on the V2 stuff? Is it just uptake?
I think it's just adoption on the wallet side. Like I think they had to do a lot of stuff just to get ready for the update that happened today or yesterday with the gas fees changing. So like MetaMask just put out a big one. Rainbow, I think, prioritized layer 2 integration, which I love, because that means all the internet camera photos will actually show up natively in your wallet without you having to switch networks or anything, which I'm really looking forward to. But Rainbow's prioritizing L2 stuff, and I think after that they'll do their Wallet Connect V2 update. But I think it's just a resource scarcity prioritization. What is the team working on now? Kind of stuff that I think is delaying it.
All this is good news. It means there's lots of stuff that needs to be built.
Yeah,
it keeps us busy.
There's so much stuff to build. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It also it demonstrates that all this stuff that we're talking about is so cutting edge that like the underlying services are still actively they're laying
this is still falling over. That's like there's still CPU charts that are like at 100 and like completely getting throttled. This is cool.
All right.
Okay, I got one random question from the finance friend about Solana, and she's like starting to get into the crypto stuff and trying to grok like what the landscape is. And so she came across an article that basically said Solana is better than Ethereum because it's faster, which the transaction speed, like Beamer was saying, is like you can't beat it. It's like the fastest in the game. Okay. So I was trying to tell her like the way that I understand things is in like decentralized app space, and as far as like ecosystem and community goes, there's so many more people playing in Ethereum. So it's yeah, like I don't like to use the word robust because it gets overused, but it's a more robust ecosystem then. So there's more people to play with, more help if you need it. That was like, and I was like, but I don't know like the landscape in politics. So I'm curious if any of you do, or what like your take is on this. Like, how do you think about, and it doesn't have to be Solana specific, but there's a bunch of different like networks that are popping up. Like how, like chains, yeah. Like how do you think of, like how do, like what's the, is there a metaphor here? Like how do they all like relate so they don't, but like they're competing kind of, yeah.
I think even Vitalik has said that the real future where this stuff scales and is used by, you know, billions of people around the world is going to be a multi-chain environment where you do have things like Solana, you do have things like Polygon, you do have things like XDAI and Binance Smart Chain and all these other ones. The most important thing is that they should all be, you know, interoperable. You should be able to take things from one to another easily.
Yep.
But I think like just for the sake of like making anything that's scalable, I think they're saying realistically, you know, multiple chains is the way to go for that, where you can then have specialized chains for specific things.
Yeah.
You know, some things may not need much security, but may benefit from real time or very quick transactions. So chains can be built optimizing for that. And then from there, you know, app developers and users to some extent will just, you know, weigh the trade-offs and build for, you know, what the right thing is for their use case.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's probably folks that are, you know, like the Ethereum maximalist kind of types that are like, you know, screw all these other chains. But if Vitalik is like kind of the benevolent dictator and he's saying that like multi-chain is the future, then I would tend to buy into that vision more so.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's the only thing that makes sense.
Is Ethereum something that you could build that system within, or is it going to be some like emergent chain that like, because you have to build it in something like an ecosystem, right? Or is it just bridges or APIs between all of them? They're like, I'm envisioning like a space where they can all interact.
I think it's just bridges.
Yeah, it's methodology between, like it's composability.
So it's like the yacht analogy or metaphor. You've got a bunch of different boats and then like they can dock in one place to do certain things as necessary, but they're sort of.
Yeah, this is the, I don't know if you guys ran across I haven't finished the paper. It's like comes out of that like art collective trust in Berlin. And they basically took the idea of a moving castle from the movie Howl's Moving Castle. And like, I don't know if you guys have seen this, but basically it's a Miyazaki film, and there's a castle on legs that like sort of wanders around the environment, and then within the castle there are like doors that are portals to other worlds. So they have this concept of like structurally having like DAOs as these castles, these worlds, or whatever, and then you can move like material between them, right? Like this sort of like you can move your NFTs between them, you can have identity between them, but they are sort of complete worlds in their, you know, participatory engagement. And so one of the, I don't know if they got into this, but the thing that like making a strong one of these means having permeability with the other ones so that you can like collaborate and move between, and those are the doors, right, in the moving castle, I guess, right? Anyways, these kinds of, it's networky versus, yeah,
network and interoperability and sort of like I just the castle I remembered, but the door is completely, I forgot about that. And it's like, it's kind of this idea that this thing is just this it's not actually there, it's just this transparent like nexus that's created in the moment and doesn't actually need to stay that way. It is, its existence is providing value in the moment. But it's open and can kind of dock. Yeah, I mean, I think that the yacht sort of thing that like plays in here too.
Yeah.
I think it's a sort of adaptive strategy. So it's a path that will be designed for because it works well. Like if you were collaborating, because the entire ecosystem is built on this collaborative
Mhm.
like mechanism. So when you start bundling up into worlds and groups and swarms and hives and whatever, there's a natural tendency to have those also be interpenetrating or whatever the hell,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
Like interoperable. So yeah, because there's also this thing where we're doing it now. Like Shahruz, you're building this sort of internet camera stuff and whatever is coming off of that, and you're also we're like building this thing together, but we're very like there is some separation there, obviously, but our mindsets are overlapping, and so we're like sort of exchanging brains based on the like focus of the context. And so is that like what kind of thing object is that, right? You know, it's like is it not two circles that are kind of overlap, you know, it's some other thing, and you're going to have a lot of these things. So like the participation in the idea space indicates where the boundary conditions are or whatever, and you can sort of size that up. This comes back to the stuff that CJ, you and I were talking about with the like smart contracts as like permission layer, and like who can see the thing and not see the thing. And this is back to the like hardware device, and you can then do that in the world. So weird. Pass all over this stuff.
And like one of the things that makes all this even possible is the fact that your identity can transfer across all these different services without needing to register for them.
Yes.
Like that's the reason you couldn't have, you know, Instagram being its own thing that docked into Facebook, but it had to be like a multi-billion-dollar acquisition, and then you know updates of terms of service and what they're going to do with all your data. Like, it's such a different
a login database. That's all it is.
Yeah,
Crazy. Absolutely crazy.
I mean, order of magnitude from like the whatever 1.8 billion, whatever they spent on Instagram to like the
16 billion, I think. Something like that.
16 billion? Wow.
Yeah. So
I might be wrong, but I think it was something sort of like that.
And advertise to.
Anyways, yes. But the underlying like how they stuck these things together, and like how permeable this stuff gets when you take away that boundary condition. Like the order of magnitude cheaper it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
More efficient. Like
yes, this is the
There's so much overhead.
game dynamics, but the cooperative game dynamics. You can like the like shared cost thing, and like there's all kinds of efficiencies you get when you distribute things. This is how the brain works. This is why we're able to have this conversation.
wow. Yeah. Yeah. What else?
It's weird. And it's the multi-chain thing is like kind of like breaking my brain a little bit, in the sense, like I'm trying to think, like, I guess John and I were talking about like this kind of bundling and unbundling thing that kind of seems to happen over time. And I kind of wonder, like, are things going to get bundled into Ethereum, like, or ENS or something, where that's kind of like the central point where you have all your different addresses, and then that goes in and like actually interfaces elsewhere. But because Ethereum is like slow and secure, like it's more this like base layer, and then anything built on top of it may work on a different chain like Solana that's much faster. But Ethereum is still underlying, like pointing to your Solana address or something like this that's actually allowing for these things to happen.
Yeah.
Or like I'm trying to figure out like that like identity portion. Like how do you track all of these like different identities? Because there is still this unbundling of identity, but we want it to, or like it would be a better user experience to have it in one place and secure.
Because in meat space, we are one entity, like
Yes.
better for worse. Like, yeah, the digital is just offering us an opportunity to allow like expression on a lot of different like wavelengths or whatever you want to call it, different personas.
Mm.
Yeah, but the you in meat space is what is sort of like tracking it.
Yeah,
For
it's
now.
social
This
DNS.
this can
Oh no, it's social DNS, what I would call this problem.
It's just it's weird to think about though, because what if you had shared, I mean, this is gets, now we can go into like Lil Michaela and all of that stuff, where you have a digital like archetype of a person or sentience that you are imbuing with all like, I don't know, personality and all of this, and it's collectively operated and owned by a bunch of, you know, single meat space people coming together, and then it is one thing, or she is one thing, or
This is John and I think talked about this, like these are deities. Like they're effectively like sort of
A collection of-
collectively, the collective conscious interface of your like DAO or something, right? And like if you could have a religious DAO, and this is the sort of like deity that is the spreaded, you know, like interactive knowledge or whatever, then you have all kinds of patterns that you need to do, machine learning stuff that gets all weird there. And that entity and its interfaces with I mean, I think all of the DAOs will have some form of this thing at some point, especially if they're data rich, which they are by interacting together online. And you can sort of have these like sort of entities that you interact with, and some of those interactions can be sort of spiritually mediated, like in the same way that you interact with tarot cards or like a Ouija board or, you know, like, or prayer or something like this. These things like, yeah, you know, but that's still like people coming together and forming a belief, and then like you can have, you know, like it's still a social act. It's not like the fucking thing wakes up and it's gonna like tell you what to do. It's like you're building the thing,
coordinating it.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, you could put a face on that. It could be a duck.
Sky's the limit.
Yeah, could be a duck.
It's really hard to like have this kind of conversation and then talk to normal people, and you're just like, oh, how's your work going? And you're going on a hike, and you're like, but did you know that you could have multiple meat space people controlling a single digital
what are you talking about? I don't even know what that means.
It's been interesting to have conversations with like entertainment, but not technical folks over the past few months, and seeing how their understanding and interest in the NFT world has developed over that time.
Yeah.
Like music folks are way further ahead than anybody else, which makes sense.
Yeah. DJs in particular, he was saying, are like a good archetype for him to work with here, even though he's not necessarily super into like DJ sets, but as an artist type or artist class, they're out there on this. They're like
makes total sense.
Yeah.
Because like a DJ is basically saying, all right, a group of people come together, I'm going to present another group of people's thing, and there's value in this combination, and there's like a uniqueness in this event. I mean, and if that like value is I guess transparent all the way through, and everybody just kind of sees what's going on and benefits, that can be a very beautiful thing. That's cool.
There's deep connections between the artists and their fans too. Like, I think much more so, or at least much more broadly applied so than film or television. Like you'll have hardcore fans of certain TV shows and movies and franchises and all that. But with music, it's like, you know, that depth is just so much more present more often.
Yeah.
So true.
It's like, I guess the presence of music and is just, it seems like it's there everywhere.
Right.
It's like so deeply embedded, whereas TV and other things are not quite as like deeply embedded in the human psyche. It's very visual, but like the accessibility of music is much higher.
It's a much older form.
Narrative structure plays in here somehow, because like television, like there's a narrative that you're sort of like you can drop into. I mean, music does that, but you can like interact with it differently. Like it's more, there's something.
I mean, we've been playing music as long as we've been like able to make noise.
We've been putting up too.
Not to the I mean, like the form of music. If you like, you can't like, you can go out on a street corner and hear music. Somebody could be making music. Like it is embedded at a deeper level, right?
There's a tempo to life
as a form. So and people like most generally value music, I think. Like, so it is a thing for which there can be a very close, immediate relationship with musicality that like a TV show's fine, but like, you know, there's something that a musical piece can do to a group of people that like Game of Thrones can't get there.
Yeah, like, and like you can share the experience together too, like with music, like you can be in a place which is, people do that for TV shows, but it doesn't feel the same.
No, right.
Yeah, like for some reason I'm picturing music as something that's 360 degrees. Like you don't need you're like dropping a level of orientation that you kind of need for a show or a movie, like where you all have to be facing the same way and looking at like this big square. Music is like omnidirectional and it doesn't really matter if you're looking at the source at all. Just like more inviting in some way.
Yeah, it can create an environment that is transcendent too.
Yeah, it's
So,
because
like-
it's primordial, I think is what you're kind of like
Yes.
lineage wise, it comes way back. Like even potentially, I'd be curious if animals hear music. I've never thought about that. I mean, they hear.
I imagine they would.
Yeah. I mean, they can hear music. They have good.
It's reminding. I was doing research on like certain sects of Islam. So that there's a Sufi sect that is like much more spiritual, artistic.
Yeah.
And somehow I landed up on the Wikipedia page for headbanging. And there's a breakout like at the top, the table of contents, where it's like number 1, Sufis. Number 2, like heavy metal or rock and roll in the 70s and forward. Number 3,
Wow.
this one parrot. This one parrot that is like famous for headbanging. And that's the entire Wikipedia. So a parrot.
You should share that link if you can remember what.
Sure.
That's
Yeah.
It is literally
I-
the Wikipedia for headbanging.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's
I think I've seen a video of this parrot too, because I have a picture of it in my mind. Like
The one that shows up in like votes all the time. Interesting.
his name, their name
Snowball.
is Snowball.
music, rock music, parrots. Snowball.
It's too good.
I'll get to.
So important you got onto Wikipedia. It's amazing.
Hatch,
I guess this is a
24,
quick little segue
Yeah.
to Wikipedia, because there's a certain contribution. Like I've like only corrected grammar on Wikipedia, and most of my knowledge of it is like secondhand from following other people's rants on Wikipedia. But there seems to be like a weird disconnect. The best Wikipedia contributors don't care about their contributors. They'll maybe make an aggregate count. I've made this many edits and I have these badges, and then that's about it. And you can look at all my edits here. But it seems to be a little hard for Wikipedia right now to like incentivize group events and group participation, group maintenance, where something like NFT badges on top of Wikipedia that are also like open and decentralized makes so much sense for the sort of, I think, crowd that like wants something like that. They don't want monetary rewards, but they also don't want to just disappear into that sea of like, you're a Wikipedian, which is what makes Wikipedia possible too, by all means. But like, I'm so curious now if Wikipedia is even looking at this as an option, or whether something else that natively has something like this is going to like compete with Wikipedia.
Yeah, I mean, it's another social thing, like, because the environment that's there probably is not a big fan of this kind of thing, which is probably a generational, like they didn't grow up on video games where like these kinds of like rewarding structures. It's nice to have a representation of something, you know, even if it's not necessary, right? Like it's just, you know, it's a social like sort of signal.
We're gonna have virtual living rooms and want to put things into them.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I think if it can be pitched in this way that it's not about status necessarily, right? Like, what is the orientation towards these objects or whatever they are? Then maybe there can be a bridge to that audience, because it's going to need to be understood by the broader community. So a lot of these things, to get these things to work, you have to give them a metaphor that, like, because their first blush understanding of it is like, all the kids want trophies or something like this. So yeah.
So yeah, what is that metaphor?
I don't
Like,
know.
is there an analog for that? Because it's something that you can. Okay.
Something about librarians comes to mind. Collection creation, sort of assorting things. That's where I would go.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it may be that the model is bespoke to the purpose of the type of person that it's trying to attract. So like, and then you can have sort of variance in there. So say, for instance, you have a problem set and you need like a certain area filled out with knowledge or something. Again, I don't really understand how Wikipedia works, so this is a bad example. But like within that, you need a type of person who has like tendencies to research or find or like think about the world in a particular way, right? And like what is the like the reward system that is in alignment with that type of person? Like, do they want a nice thing for their digital environment? Do they want a monetary reward? Do they want like a virtual good that is like the most beautiful sculpture you've ever seen, and you know, whatever, right? Like, is it artistic? Is it functional? Like, you know, there can be different sort of
social access and reward. I mean, does it unlock an NFT door somewhere?
Exactly. Like, so I think that like it's a protocol for these kinds of things so that they can be designed towards purpose. It gives you a medium so that you can sort of work your community towards different goals with these kind of incentive structures. And if it is an environment where those things are interchangeable or there's some economy there, the likelihood that this thing will flourish and like, you know, like it's, again, this is back to the like state and market design stuff. Like it just keeps coming back to like, what are the type of people and what do you need them doing and how do they see themselves and how do they participate directly in the creation of that thing? Anyways,
and fun. Gotta be fun.
It's gotta be fun, and you gotta get like a dinosaur statue.
Dinosaur statue of
Yeah.
civilization.
Yeah. Participation in civilization gets you a dinosaur statue.
Perfect.
Seems reasonable.
There's a nice ring to it, you know.
Yeah, I think that like the closer answer to your question is that there are probably metaphors that are like low-hanging fruit for this stuff that like, I hope to, like, if there are any experiments that pop up that like are games that like have this positive sum, like contribution, like high quality information thing. Like, so the participation in the thing produces something that's like either artistically interesting or like qualitatively interesting research that is very cool, something like this. Yeah, I mean, I think that's an open one.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know, made me think of like college newspaper experience too. Just the last thing you said, people putting something together that's like kind of greater than some of its parts.
Yeah, that wasn't like tied to revenue or like stupid numbers. It was simply people coming together.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing of like, you know, there's no Little League participation trophy for that kind of thing. Like there's nothing that you display necessarily, but you like end up with like a cool thing that you're a part of. So I guess there's like a soft layer there of like, you know, a sense of purpose, a sense of belonging, like you're a sense of contributing, like value to something. You're a part of something that's bigger than yourself. And then I don't know how much those things need to be visualized and displayed.
I think
that's interesting.
So this brings us back to the reputational currencies. So they don't need to be, but they will be. Like they can be. Like, because in the participation towards building one of these higher goods, right? Like, so making a zine, like creating an album with friends or whatever, you know, whatever it is, like, or a larger project, creating a piece of infrastructure for Web3, like there is participation that can be like rewarded there. And if you're gonna have some reward, you might as well make it cool. Like, you know,
fair enough, yeah.
This is when you mint money. You got lots of crazy artists doing things on that money because it's symbol and it's, you know, it's got all this stuff. So yeah, I don't know. I think that the byproduct of that is that you get these things anyway, and they're tradable. And maybe if they are imbued with artistry, their value is a little bit higher, which makes you more likely in a subtle way to participate in the environment. Yeah, I don't know. There's maybe a positive angle on like getting these things. I don't know.
Yeah, my hope would be that the ideal outcome here is you increase the range of people contributing to a project, because you now include just doing it because it's a cool thing and I'm going to feel good, and the people who just want a little more than that. But now you need more people, and I don't know. There may be negative consequences to that as well, or to be determined.
Almost certainly. I mean, there's some pit of despair at the end of all of these things. Just can you catch it before it becomes a big enough problem? You have a system that like sort of adapt to it. The thing I was thinking about with this is like, so one of the things with crypto is one of the on-ramps is like degenerate trading. And like, but you're trading these things, they have value. Where is that value? Why is that value? You start asking questions, and then if you get curious enough about this thing, you start to figure out how people are making them and why they're valuable. And then you might get the idea that you could go do that yourself. So the on-ramp is like agreed to potentially collaborative. So I'm all right with that. Like that's, I mean, I had some of that myself. So like you can have like the sort of dark on-ramps.
Got to hijack the existing system.
Yeah, I don't know if the end result is that you know you're doing something more profitable with your life. That's not so bad. Sure. You get a statue, a dinosaur.
What's a dinosaur statue?
Just saying, that's what I'm in it for.
We could throw it in the volcano after you die.
So make it.
I'm really hoping there's a sandwich statue too. I really want a sandwich statue.
Yeah.
Sandwich statue? Yeah, that's good.
Any
Yeah.
kind of
I
sandwich.
mean, for them.
Yeah, hot dogs.
Yeah.
It's a hot dog. No, it's a sandwich statue.
Both depending on which app you look at.
Everything's a sandwich. So every statue. I just,
George's character.
So yeah, back to, oh yeah, I did some mock-ups
Back to the Future.
in Figma, and I overdid
They
it.
look wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, I think we
they do look awesome.
Thank you.
I haven't seen them
I'm
yet.
trying
Pulling
to-
it up now.
What's that?
I'm pulling it up now. I haven't. been
Okay,
in the
yeah.
Figma, so.
Do you want to, we can pull it up on Figma and you can show?
Sure.
Yeah, show and tell.
Because I think we need to, we like have to basically, can you do it on your computer?
Just pull it up on yours. It's fine.
We basically need to rendezvous around this. What's the word I'm looking for? Because CJ was not here last time, and like
Yeah.
move it back into more back end technical.
Yeah, I think John and I we discussed a little bit prior to the call, since we've just been like hanging out talking about this stuff. Actually, before we move on to that, right before the call, I got a text from Phil, and he said basically like, he could either come directly into one of these calls or do directly Uniswap. He doesn't really care. He's like, I'm pretty comfortable. Like I've met Kristen and John. He's probably met Dave through Blog Club as well. So he's like, honestly, like I'm good to just do Uniswap if you want, or if you want to do like a little introduction, that's cool too. But
Right on.
he's basically down, and then we can schedule around him. So if you want to just jump into Uniswap, I'm kind of good with that, because I'm guessing there's going to be the little intro time and all this anyhow.
Do
I
you-
mean,
yeah.
Either is fine.
yeah.
Yeah,
mean,
wait,
it's
let's think about that. Like how do we want to design this event then, I guess is the idea.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
and I guess
so the way to look at it, I think, is an opportunity to like experiment, and he's a willing participant in an experiment. So
Which is
like
great.
we can try a style of, here's a
Yeah.
new person and they have interests that are aligned. We already happen to know them, which is nice, but like we can on-ramp them into some kind of thing that might be usable as a form in the future. That's where I'm thinking. So
Yeah, I don't know. I say we invite him to a call like this and we talk about Uniswap. Like there's no
Yeah.
pomp and circumstance.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if we're all cool with it, we can decide on the call, we can live stream it, and then if we all like sit there on the call, we're like, who would care about this? We can ping them. We don't have to like broadcast it for our first one.
Yep.
yeah, I think just him knowing that that's what we're doing. And then that's plenty. Like coming along to talk in the open about something we all barely understand and we're going to try to figure out together is like a decent enough like vulnerability thing. It's not it's a small like, but if you know, that's something, because we're going to share it publicly, and if you're fine with that, then great. I don't know. Seems fine to me.
Cool. Figure out when to do that. And Arthur, it's Arthur, right?
Mhm.
Was this
Yeah.
Saturday, or did I think I might have fallen off that chain like completely. Did we decide something?
No, sorry. It's like it's been a nightmare these past few days with the travel and stuff. But I think it probably makes more sense to just wait after he's back in the States. We're probably all in Portland. Just makes
Yeah, perfect.
coordination. So no rush on that.
We can just loop him in, I think, to where we're at and like build something together.
Yep.
But again, do the same thing where this one, I don't think we might record for our own edification, but we don't really need to like broadcast this one.
Yeah, maybe it starts in the workshop, sort of like thing where, again, it's not broadcasted per se, but it's maybe like the first instantiation of something that is recurring, where he's just the experimental person that goes through it. And yep, I mean, like I don't think he'd have any issues with recording it or streaming it, but just the idea that this try to feel a shape that can be
Try to what?
try to like get a shape that can be recurring or like reused.
Yeah, because this is like the whole like building with the garage door open kind of thing.
Yeah,
Versus, I guess like a knowledge information session, but it kind of like applying the same methodology between the two people that was on different sides of the experiment.
Get the people in the room. We're going to agree at the beginning of the session what we're going to build together. It's going to be based on like this, and it'll be based that this is like some sort of like kind of where we're at with the like where any of the group is at with mindset, and then decide what like, this would be more of building. However you're building, it doesn't have to be in code. Together versus just talking. I think that's the big difference.
It's just a different style in the thing. I think the broadcast or whatever you want to call that part of it, the sharing part, there is like a mechanism for making a media that can be taken in by other people, either real time or asynchronously, I think, or both ideally.
Yep.
I think that there should be a policy on all of these things as like it's a lever to play with to like create different environments for types of engagement. So for these, like we're sort of prioritizing like doing it in public for people who are willing to play in public like this. A small, tiny public, people who care, but that's fine. Like, you know.
Yep.
Yeah.
Totally.
I'm stoked. I'm ready.
Yeah, just picturing like a closed door session, like at some company where the equivalent happens, except that person is paid a shit ton of money, and then that knowledge goes into a Slack with like access to like 20 people, and then I'm just like, holy shit, like why? Why? I mean, because I just like I know that's the way we're doing the exam.
Literally own the intellectual property that comes out of your like everything. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, even the stuff that's like peripheral, like you're just like how like it's it's a form of enslavement. It's like mental enslavement. Like we own your brain. The fuck you own my brain.
Just the part of it you used during that 15-minute walk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those neurons specifically.
Oh, you were on our property. You had the idea for that company, and you used the company email to forward something like that. This is the kind of stuff I think that happens in some of these like super like high like highly fiat valued like companies.
Yeah.
And then we own a stake in your company then, this new one that you formed, because you said
you used our photons to write your notes. Gonna want to return on that.
It's gonna cost you. All right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna set you up on I'm gonna rig up a little thing, a standing desk.
If you like.
Yeah, it's better, because otherwise the laptop's gonna be in our lap.
Sure.
I don't want to deal with.
I'll just sit here.
Yeah.
Intermission.
Yeah.
Yeah, an intermission. We're gonna change the set now.
Change the set now.
That was fun, by the way. I'm glad we kind of zoomed out and chatted for a while about zoomed out kind of stuff, because we've been super deep in stuff.
We like to do this the most, so we can have time for just this all the time.
So I think this is I mean, I don't know. It sort of occurs sometimes, you know, like.
We're doing this all the time. Him and I are like everywhere, middle of the night on a hiking trail. Like.
But yeah, like talking to Beamer unlocked some of this. So I think when we all get together, we can give ourselves permission to be extra weird. Get into the full blown.
All right.
What are you doing?
I'm gonna give you the.
You're getting the reins.
Yeah.
I can't use a computer anymore. I'm not allowed.
What is wrong with Zoom?
Just hit share.
I just seen something.
Anyways, move this down here.
Oh, it's 'cause this invisible overlay is being moved.
Oh, is that what it is? Okay, I was like,
Yeah.
what's going on? I thought it was.
So very disorienting.
Is that coming out full screen? How's that looking?
Yeah, we just see the whole frame, but I think if you hide that UI, it'll look great. Yep, perfect.
Cool.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's where earlier he's like, I think I need to stop. I think I went too far.
This is what happened.
Just far enough, I think. This is
Well, it's starting to get maybe too opinionated. We can talk about that. And like when we implement it, we can make it whatever, like a sort of message thing is popping out of this a little. Like this is more or less what we talked about before, like the query stuff. I think I need to implement that to see what it all looks like. It's just the reordering stuff we talked about, highlighting new blocks, highlight style is like this. Yeah, so for these guys, like the transaction or TX hash or whatever it is, would link to Etherscan. I mean, we talked about adding that. Like, I don't know. I'm still like a little confused on when we're like writing to the blockchain with these things, like, or what makes sense to do. Yeah.
Can you elaborate a little bit?
So
I just do better when I can see people.
yeah. So we had talked about like the sort of pre-published thing. And like, I know that we're writing like some information to IPFS, right? And that is effectively the guts of the post or whatever. And then how that's all split out with the metadata and then what gets written on the chain is not too important here. But like when we are putting like these blocks on the chain, like, does it happen like before the publish event? You know, like we're using them as component pieces in an environment, and they don't necessarily need to be on chain until like they are attributed via a post, whatever. And or we're doing it some other way that I don't understand, or which does that make sense?
Because there's a cost to put it on chain, right? Every time you attach something, which I think we want to be efficient in regard to that gas cost, because it's energy, right? It's costing something to do that. So yeah,
I think we hadn't like solved this problem yet.
Okay.
I think we've kind of been working around it, to my understanding.
Got it.
Yeah. And I think at least for the time being, like given how like we're operating on the test net, so everything is effectively free. So right now every block is going on the chain. But in terms of like this kind of pre-published thing where something is not on the chain, there is no concept of this really baked in as of now.
so let's talk a little bit like the reputational sort of participatory whatever. Does that require that something is encoded on the chain, or can you look at pre-chain information to be able to weave into that? I don't know if that question makes sense. Because I think
that's probably good.
Go ahead.
I think that's probably best done on a layer 2 chain.
Okay.
Which is where I've seen most of these things taking place, because that way you get kind of the best of both worlds in that it's secure, it's decentralized, it's trustless,
Yes.
but it also, you can do it willy-nilly without, worrying about going bankrupt.
Yeah, so that makes sense. Because part of like the way I've been envisioning this and talking about it is if we're collaborating sort of in this, like directional, but not super goal oriented in the sense of like, you're doing this and you're doing that. We're sort of letting it emerge. So everyone's participating in their own way. It's interest driven. You sort of let things arise. But if we are documenting all of that somewhere, like L2, let's call it, and that's cost efficient, then we know if we did mint an NFT that we decided to sell, or that people could, put money into and invest in some way, shape, or form, we can sort of attribute who gets what based on some amount of participation. And like, some percentage of that would go back to a treasury, like yada, yada, yada. But having that built into, like, I didn't think about L2. So that makes sense to me. Cost effective, but secure, decentralized.
It also sounds like this process of taking all these individual NFTs, and there may be this thing that you give all the NFTs to, and this thing takes them in, burns them, and produces something else, but also like carries across that data and like outputs the proof of that thing happening. That might be a place to separate out the pieces of information that don't need to make it in, or only need to make it in for like the people that have access to see it.
Yeah.
So that mechanism right there, because up to that point, like where there is a mechanism to put them up, like a reason to put them on the chain, and then an activity that like then gives us a publish event, like there is, it is working with them as material that is, like important somehow. I'm just looking for the weight of that, like, just as an understanding. Yeah. So anyways,
the weight of it, say more like,
so if there is a cost to making these things, and then they have a literal solidity.
Yeah.
I mean, it's called solidity for a reason.
Yeah.
Like it is something that is being brought into like ether existence. Like what is the reason for doing that? Like, and because you can write anything to the thing, but if you have a reason to do it and like downstream consequences of doing it, then it is more likely to be a good pattern.
So the reason you mint something is because you think it has some value outside of your ecosystem and you want it to be shared more broadly, is kind of where I'm feeling into it. So
I'm thinking of it like similar to that is like, it's the cost of a piece of paper versus distributing a piece of text, right? Like distributing a book, whereas like Ethereum is now like distributing the book, rather like L2 is just like, I want a piece of paper to like play around.
Yeah, add another piece of paper to the book, like sort of thing, versus Ethereum being like, let's publish the book now.
Right.
I'm a little hazy. I was under the impression L2 was simply about verification of blocks. I didn't realize there's a difference in, I guess, they're separate chains to some extent, and then some of it makes it back onto the main chain with pointers. Is that?
So they're separate chains, but you can configure state synchronization mechanisms that go either way. And so you can read from another chain.
And those are defined by whoever and whatever is implementing this whole project. Yeah. So it doesn't have
there's methods of doing that within Solidity, where you have, a parent contract, and then you have children contracts that can be deployed onto layer 2s. And then they have communication protocols that allow them to kind of sync up. I was going to take it back to like the question that Dave posed about like, where do these go? So I think Beamer and I were going to start learning this thing because he was curious about it, and then we realized it wasn't the right solution for his thing, so neither of us learned it. But I think it might be the right solution here, which is IPNS, Interplanetary Naming System, I think. So it's a part of IPFS, but basically what it allows you to do, I haven't done it yet, so the high level understanding might be a little off. Essentially, you can create a pointer to a directory of files or to a single file. And then that pointer you can keep updating without ever having to write to the chain. And the security mechanism for that is that some server creates a private key that is basically the key to updating that pointer URL. So basically, instead of your like QM plus 35 digits or characters, whatever, you get some bonkers 100-character kind of, you know, thing. But then that you can update off chain to point at the latest version of something. So that as a thing that we could tap into for, you know, some of these flows within here might be useful for drafts, might be useful for group stuff.
Yep.
Honestly, like at some point, and there may be a good reason why people aren't doing this yet, but at some point it might make sense for the NFT that's on the chain to also be linking to a pointer that's dynamic that can be updated off chain, if that makes sense for the use.
So I think that this comes back to the pattern that John was talking about. Like you create like a shell of one that has all the information of one, right?
Yep.
Then if it continues to be useful or viable in some way, then you can move it forward into reality through a publish process or a minting process that like solidifies some of the component parts of it, so that you get like non-destructive capability up to the point that, so this is the pre-publish process. Because, you know, like there is also a psychological, like, you know, lever to play with here. Like if you can say that like, oh, this stuff it's out there and you're going to get credit for it, but it's not forever in the instantiation that it exists, right? There's some mutability. It's a hybrid mutable thing, right? Like you're giving yourself a playground to get it to the place where it wants to be shared out in the world. I think that that's a feature like of the media system. That's nice. So if that patterning works, that's interesting. If we just have to write them straight from the block maker, that's fine too. Like we can work around that. So that, yeah, I'll go back to sharing that, like how we put these things. Wow. Like in the, like it's going off in Etherscan and that has an implication, or, you know, like this is sort of why, anyways, they can live here. This can be a permalink. This can go to the IPFS or IPNS or whatever. Like we've got a little style to toss those in there. When we settle on these things, like I can do a little iconography or whatever. But yeah, so.
Is this, just out of curiosity, Shahruz, when you were talking about making the like Etherscan, for example, more accessible, would this be a place where you click on it and you get to see something that's not just a list of transactions? It's formatted?
Yeah, potentially. I think like Etherscan is basically giving you like, kind of like, here's the database manager view, and you get all the power, but none of like the storytelling and none of the hand-holding that explains what's going on to you.
Yep.
So I think like it's a combination of language, of UI, of playfulness. Yeah. Basically
like
take one specific view or slice.
We could have that as a project at one point where we have a specific way of showing, like when you click, and maybe we just collapse all three of these then, because you don't need all three. It's just go see whatever the languaging is here.
It's the history. I mean, all of this is our history stuff. Like creating a visual language that you can understand what was happening in like sort of human terms, rather than a bunch of hashes and stuff, with these things being links off to this stuff probably. Like, I don't know that you need this at a top level when you're using it. This is up to you guys, because you're going to be power users of this thing before I am. So
I don't know how this plays in here. I keep coming back to this, where there's certain information that is contextual or metadata that is on the backside of the card. And it's not a good metaphor because I don't know how we do that. And I don't know that you'd want to build a card that you can flip, but
I mean, the card is just a visualization of what you're trying to say. There is metadata
that's
that
my
is
metaphor that I come back to.
Yeah. So this is the history is part of that metadata. There may be like, you know, context is also part of that metadata, like the underlying guts.
So you could have like
of these objects.
You're saying like because the hash and the permalink and IPFS, those come at different stages or same stage, but they're somewhere in the history. They're accounted for there. But this is just one view where it's chronological. There's a potentially just a different UI, a different interface to go understand what it is you're looking at.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of these things can be entire like repos if they needed to be. But like, and I'm sure somebody will go build a crazy interface like that.
For what we're doing,
I'm trying to keep it as like, like affordable as possible in its interactions without adding too many layers of abstractions and little doodads to play with.
Included as a block in the history then, as it arrives, like in reverse chronological order. And it doesn't have to live at the top level. Is based on what you just said. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, the question then becomes in usage, we'll figure out whether or not you need to access these things like more, like permalink probably, like get it there. Do you need to go to IPFS that frequently? I don't know. Like there may be a use case if you're using like images and then we're dishing up a smaller image in the stream and you want to get to the high,
Sure.
Just so you can move through the thing as quickly as possible to get what needs to be gotten. Long term, this is what the SDK gives us, the ability to shuffle all this stuff around, and we're just the way I'm thinking about this is establishing a toehold on the types of things that we're going to be doing. It is just an example that's illustrative of the kinds of things you can do. So that's why I'm harping on what these things are more than where
it's like opening the panel to see the little gears and pipes underneath, but they don't necessarily all need to be open at all times.
And so
I think for most users, it's not like even that important to show. For 95% or plus of people, it's going to be completely irrelevant. That's at least that's my intuition.
Yeah, I think you're right too. Like some of this stuff.
But for now, it's good to have so we can at least show that it's possible. And if someone wants to build a UI for themselves, at least they have like some example of like how to do it.
And then when we show people the interface and be like, look at all this Web3 stuff on here, it does stuff.
That's exactly what I was just thinking. Like all of the sites that have all this information, it's like proof of Web3, which is that's sort of where we're at. Like people need to demonstrate that this is actually on the blockchain. We're not just saying it.
Right.
Yeah, I wonder if the transaction kind of badge ultimately becomes like a verified kind of thing, because that's really what it's trying to say, like longer term. But yeah, the whole design industry has to build that convention together here.
Yeah. Like I started jumping ahead on that stuff and like symbolizing things. I'm like, I'm not going to be the guy that does that. So I'll like put a TX in a bubble and then that'll get you like a tiny bit further. So
for this project and where we're at, that makes the most sense.
I've just got to remind myself not to go make a fucking visual language for the whole thing. So this thing, the newest stuff here is basically this thing being like sort of a messagey kind of like, and then we can probably put contextual stuff down here and, we've got a tray to play with, if it needs an image, we can swap that out. Like there are lots of patterns we can steal from to fill this thing in. And then this information being wherever it is, the highlighted view, which is just going to be make it yellow in the background. And that's basically
I forget what the highlight.
Just newest, things that you haven't seen unread.
That was one thing that we wanted to talk about technically, right? Like how we would arrive at not read.
We talked out one pattern, like I think Shahruz, you had an idea, or how Reddit did it at least.
Yeah, I think that was half of the solution though, where that would be kind of how would you measure, what should be highlighted. There's the secondary question of where does that information get stored?
Yeah.
Is it just your browser? And if you swap to a different, browser or a different client, it's just not there. The IPNS stuff could be a solution where, we just have a centralized server where it can keep track of your private key. And then if you're signed in, it'll just shoot up like an update. And then that backend server will say, all right, here's a new IPFS hash, point the IPNS for this user and all their metadata that's associated with their account to the new IPFS instance of that. So there's a couple ways of going about it. browser storage might be the simplest place to start. And that may just be good enough for now.
Yeah.
Iterate.
I think John and I have potentially discussed another solution, which is just add a block per user or something, and then that just has like all of the IDs of all the blocks that you have read, and when you last read them effectively, which could be another one, a little bit more permanent, not very scalable, but.
So like an on-chain mapping of user to post to time. And then from that you can get
one more. We realized the IPFS content ID as well.
Yeah, because it can change.
Right.
I would be curious though to explore IPNS a little bit further as well, especially like within the context of like publish, pre-publish, and then this as well. I've looked at it a little bit prior, but I haven't really like understood the mechanism. I think I've used it in the sense of DNS for my own website. It underlying uses IPNS, but I haven't figured out exactly like how this is used practically.
Yeah, I think that could be a fun live session. We all learn together.
Yeah. I think our best bet right now is to sort of scope out what we want to, which I think we were thinking we would do that this session, but we were talking about other things. So next session is more technical, like let's map, like let's go through these things. Like how do we figure out what's highlighted, where it's stored? The pinning thing, I think, was another one.
That's low on the priority list.
There was like 3 things. I don't know if I have to go look them up. That
we wanted the queries, like how that's going to get
Oh,
plugged in. That's the big chunk of this,
Yeah.
all this stuff up here. And then the queries as views, which gives us like this navigational methodology that starts building in like our main nav, right? This is the stuff that I'm interested in, or I can affect in any way. And then what else was it? Oh, can the state be part of the query stuff? Like, does that make sense? Like, you know, we're
stored state.
Yeah. Is there any connection to that? Like,
what do you mean?
Stored state, like at the browser level, at the user level, what are you imagining?
Probably at the
Like
user
what is state
level
here?
for all this stuff, like, because you just talked about 2 patterns of potentially like having user mediated like state management, like, you know, these are the things that I've read and haven't read or whatever, and that's tied somehow to the wallet effectively. And then where you store that information. And I was curious if that had anything to do with the queries or if there is any like front end on that.
So in other words, are you feeding that data into the query somehow, or is it purely a display level thing that says, well, this block has been seen because I have access to this data? So is it kind of like a loop?
Well, if you're putting it on chain, then you definitely have those states stored. And then you can just sniff it from wherever you're at. That's the most recent. I don't know what performance wise that makes. Anyways,
so can you explain the UI implications of what you're describing with the query? I don't think I'm visualizing it necessarily.
Where you could save a query, is that?
Yeah, I guess it's like queries as views. And so you can build an entire view from like a query effectively.
Right.
But again, I'm trying to understand more like the pros and cons of laying it out in the different ways. And I may be adding just a variable to this that's unimportant. Like I'm not looking to build something with this. It's more like feeling out the territory on what you guys are talking about.
Just to make sure I understand the question, was the question that can the queries have user specific filters that read into their state and then are affected by that, as opposed to them being global queries across the board where you and I typing in the same command will always see the same thing? Got it. Yeah, I think that should be doable, and the things that you described make sense for that. Yeah.
Whether or not that's a good way to do it, I was just curious if that is how it works. So it may open future possibilities, I guess. Yeah, I've got to, like, the query stuff is becoming a hammer. So I'm just trying to nail everything.
Yeah.
So here we go.
So I guess one really just low level practical example is the same query on two people's different devices, and the query takes into account whether most of the content has been read or most of the content has not been read. And as such, displays it differently. Yeah.
So, which we're going to do one way or another anyway, like, so that, it's just sort of, how does that tie to the wallet and, storage and, where does this thing live? I'm trying to understand where you put this stuff in how it has an effect on the interface, like what it's going to do to the, I don't know yet. I mean, we won't know until we start getting into it, but yeah.
Yeah, this kind of relates to, we talked about a tagging system for like functional operational, like use. So that like if you tagged something in a certain way, potentially on a query, it would render a specific way. So you can, this is where John was like, oh, that would be cool. Like imagining in Twitter, you could format something so it looks different for other people because you said, make it look like this for other people. Like this one's important.
Yeah, so it's that layer of presentational information. I mean, wherever that gets stored, and then there is personal presentational information. So like, like show me this in a list. When I send you this link, it's going to be laid out in this sort of, whatever Canvas model or whatever. And then when I look at that particular version, there is also like some temporal layer to like, or interaction layer on the personal level. Yeah, we're just doing the like primordial versions of all of that stuff.
Yep. Query functionalities where you start and then you end up. Yep. And pending block verification UI.
Yeah, so this was like, having just the connect wallet stuff, and then like user accounty kind of stuff, and then Shahruz mentioned.
That's just pinned to the bottom left, right? Position.
Yeah, I mean, it can go anywhere, but for right now, it's our layout.
No, yeah, I think it's a good spot. I was just confused by the fact that it was floating above. I was like, oh, not sure.
Yeah,
but yeah, bottom left.
We'll try that, and then like just taking the pattern from Uniswap where they pop it up, they pop this thing open. I think I can just do it. Let me out. Oh no, I don't have it tied in here. Anyways, they pop it open, and then they show all the transactions, I think, in there underneath like the account information. So like you can get to, so there's like a modal pattern there that we can potentially pull from, or whatever. It's a place to put stuff. And then like we talked about, like having the like pending transactions, or seeing a list of like the overall history. It can maybe live in there for now, or we can move it up here or something. I still don't know what's all going to be in there. When we start spitting out a list of these kinds of events, it'll be easier for me to design that stuff, because I started like trying to dream them up, and I'm like, I don't know.
It's not time.
And then I went to go try Uniswap to like see what their process is like, but it's going to cost me a minimum of $50. So
you can switch to the Rinkeby network and do everything there.
Yeah, I figured that, but I was in the midst of doing this, and I'm like, so next time, I was going to ask you what's the best way to prototype like all the UI on this stuff. So now I got the answer. Cool. I mean, that's basically all I got for this stuff for now.
So the priority really is the query, I think.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's the biggest one. And then part of the query, like highlight stuff, would come after that, is what I'm seeing. And then after that, like pending block verification, after that, tagging system stuff.
Yeah.
So
it starts getting
priority,
a lot more complicated. Yeah, I think there's like some really low-hanging fruit with the query stuff that should be like pretty simple, at least in terms of like building the initial page. Like that should be relatively straightforward.
Yeah. Cool. So I think that the easiest, like stupidly silly thing is build the most simple query, like be able to query something in the system. So this makes me think about, is there a way to add content to the system that we could actually query so we have something to play with? But I guess
we already do. We already can do that.
Okay.
Well, that, and we can also import all of Discord.
We can also do that.
Yeah.
seed data.
The whole thing, every Discord.
How do you do that? Because that could be, we do that first, tie that in, and then build a query, like the simplest query. Yeah.
I'm assuming they have a nice export, but even if they don't, a bot should just be able to go to each channel and export each message as a JSON blob, and then format it into a block format, throw it up on IPFS, and
Associating the actual transaction might be kind of annoying.
yeah, maybe there could be like a batch transaction of some sort that basically says here's a series of blocks. Yeah, part of it could be messy.
I mean, we can hack it in.
What if we
Like, for sure.
Well, what if we go back to, what do we need right now to be able to just post blocks in starting now into the future? Like, what's the barrier on that right now?
You mean through Discord or through
Using our
Just posting in general.
Yeah, like without query, like before that, like we're still
We're
not,
doing- we can do that now.
we can do it
Yeah.
now?
We have that.
It's just not displayed, but yeah,
Yeah.
we can do that right now.
Okay,
Like
think
it's happening.
I think we can do a pass on getting it hooked into the display so we can start seeing what that feels like.
Mhm.
Then we've
Yeah.
got a pile of them, right? And then
Yeah, I
that-
guess-
that's the first interface to build, which is show me all my stuff or show all the stuff or whatever.
Star query, just everything.
Cool.
I think in either case, the next step would be the graph.
Mhm.
oh yeah,
Because yeah, I
that's
think
the
in
queries.
one session, we could get something deployed that we build live together.
Cool.
And then that'll give us a querying system that we can build queries on top of.
Nice.
Yep.
Yeah, once you have the schema put together, they have that interface too, where you can like ping the thing, right? Yep. Cool.
So we can basically simulate this search bar on their
Yep.
UI and even
Yep.
iterate from that point and see what else do we need, how else should we structure the data here.
Yeah, and then you can
Yeah.
manually
Yep.
spit them out into the page. Yep, cool.
Yep.
Yeah, that's fun. I mean,
That
that'll be a
feels-
fun.
that
little-
feels doable in a session. It's not crazy.
Mhm.
Okay.
That like 30-minute video that I posted last week
Yeah.
basically did that whole process live. So
Cool.
if they can do it in 30 minutes, I'm pretty sure we can do it in a couple hours.
Sweet.
Bring some coffee. It'll be good.
Cool. I think that's low hanging fruit. And if we get to anything else, we get to something else. Cool.
When are we gonna do it?
That was Monday.
I have no idea what day it is.
I think it's Thursday,
Thursday.
but my clock's starting to really break down as well.
Yeah, we could do Monday,
When do we leave here?
Free Pacific.
Yeah, I
Wednesday.
was gonna say, I slightly prefer Sunday morning, but I can
Works.
also do Monday.
Sunday morning sounds very interesting. I'm down.
Yeah.
I think, hold
Works for
on,
me.
I think I have to, I mean like early, like. I think
How early?
It's okay.
I don't
That's
know if people are awake at 9.
My
9?
body's still in Central Time, so I'm good.
I mean,
Oh, yeah, actually 9 or 10. I think my morning's free, actually. I forgot. Sunday is like mostly free until the afternoon. The afternoon's totally shafted though.
Those are builds. Sunday 9 a.m.
10 a.m. you said.
9 or 10, I can do. whatever.
Shahruz,
And
your
things fine.
choice, because we're an hour ahead now.
I'm good with either.
Okay,
I'm honestly good with either.
Cool.
what's better for you, CJ? 9?
Let's do 9.
Okay.
I like early.
It's when your brain still works.
Yeah.
We're
my
gonna
brain's
be all-
shut down by
that's-
12.
That's the earliest we've gotten together. So
Something
I
must be
think
going
so.
on. Yeah.
it's gonna be a completely different energy. Nice.
Wow. Looking forward to it.
Sweet.
Yeah, we covered a lot of ground in this one.
Yeah. We're.
It's a banger.
Mhm.
Best of.
Yeah.
This was super helpful, by the way, for me personally, because I'm thinking through a lot of the first part of this, because I'm thinking
Yeah.
through a lot of the stuff for a net camera and trying to get that going very soon. So just thinking more broadly about structure and
Mhm.
what we're, it was very helpful. Which, by the way, I think next week I'm going to start just kind of trying some stuff out in live sessions. So
Cool.
I will let you all know, because it would be lovely to have you guys
Yeah.
involved
That
there
sounds
too.
super fun.
Yes.
Cool. I think just to kind of, yeah.
I was just gonna. I saw the internet. There's an internet camera Discord. I was just curious. Is that open, or like how do you?
Oh yeah. Let me post the invite link for you guys.
Sweet.
It was also in the like help.
Oh, is it in the help page?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's how I found it.
Yeah, I got you though. I think that link
Awesome.
should work that I just shared. But yeah, so the first one, I think I'm gonna have Beamer in as well. I think the first one I'm just gonna do like a presentation of the contracts and diagrams for how everything works together, and answer some questions. If there's questions, try and make sure everybody kind of gets it. And then I've got some bigger questions of like, how should I redesign a couple of these things to solve a couple of problems, including things like deletion, moderation. So trying to get more of a group, effort there, and more perspectives.
Cool. Yeah, that'll be
Sweet.
fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah, sounds awesome.
Cool.
I'm looking forward to it for sure.
Awesome. Me too.
It's all happening.
Woohoo!
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like we were talking to Beamer and like internet cameras coming up, and like we're working on something. I'm just like, there's something happening. Like this is the DAO to DAO. We don't have DAOs, but like, how do we all get to get, like, what does that look like without it being contrived? I don't know yet, but
It looks like this. I'm gonna have an event. You want to come? Yeah. All right. That's how the team starts. It's like with bands. You're like, you're gonna come to my show?
yeah,
Only this is more fun because you get to like play along.
Yeah.
So,
it's like going and making the music together though.
yeah.
Mhm.
Bands.
No cover charge.
Exactly.
No cover charge.
You gotta pay to play.
Wristbands so you can drink. I'm not wearing mine. Sure.
You have to wear
We
wristbands.
distribute NFTs. You can only drink if you have NFT.
Basically, that's it. It's modern wristbands. You're gonna, yeah.
We learned that Utah is not allowed to serve beer on tap that's above 5% alcohol,
CJ.
which
Yep.
is up 3.2%. And there's a whole backstory there, but we're talking with a guy that used to live in Park City, and an English woman came through, and so we're talking to her. We're in this hostel, and she's like, she cannot understand how you can't serve booze with like without a higher like alcohol content. She could be a bartender, and she's just like, I just don't understand. That she tells a story about how in England they would go to, what were they called?
Like they're like a type of social club.
That is like member only as minors, because the police couldn't come in to get you unless there was like somehow permission. So they'd go drink underage, and they were protected from the law. And I'm like,
That's brilliant.
Whoa.
like, so this is where I'm coming from. We're like, yeah, it makes sense that you wouldn't understand this culture.
Yeah, they were. The guy was talking. Nick was talking about how, as recent as like the early 2000s, you had to be a member of a bar
In Utah.
in Utah to like be able to drink like higher alcohol content stuff. So like
They couldn't even sell it. You would have to like
you store it there.
in
And like,
in a locker, you bring it yourself, and
Wow.
you can go into the club. Like I was like, this is kind of cool though. Like
There's a cool aspect to it, but the fact that it like cuts away the thing where I can just go into a bar and have a drink is like not so cool.
Yeah.
If I could have both, maybe that sounds
like a
interesting.
speakeasy sort of thing. I don't know. There's actually like high-end clubs do this where you can buy like really nice bottles of booze. Like I forget where I went one time, and they were telling us like, oh, Michael Jordan has like a cabinet or a locker or whatever. I'm just like, ooh, like who gives a shit? I think
Michael Jordan gives a shit.
I think it was in Chicago. I was like, I guess that's cool, but like, first of all, I'm never going to get to watch Michael Jordan enter the club. He's going to go through some like backdoor thing. And then like he gets to drink out of this little thing like that.
Well, you know that it's there.
Good for Michael. Hope he's enjoying it.
Well, the selling point.
I'm just imagining Michael Jordan coming in and being like, what, you don't think I'm cool? Well, no, I think you're cool, but I don't care what you drink.
Okay. Well, on that note, I think, see ya.
On that note, we're going to go get a drink.
Yeah, or something.
Oh,
Cool.
awesome.
Enjoy
Thanks,
it.
guys. This was rad.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
This is awesome.
Thanks, y'all.
Till next time. Later.
Bye.
Bye.